Book 16. Meanwhile, in the hut, Odysseus and the noble swineherd had kindled a fire and were making breakfast in the early light. They had already sent the herdsmen out with the droves of swine. The dogs fawned around Telemachus and did not bark at him as he approached. Odysseus noticed the dogs fawning and heard footsteps. His words flew fast to Eumaeus.
Eumaeus, one of your men must be coming, or at least someone you know. The dogs aren't barking and are fawning around him. I can hear his footsteps.
His words weren't out when his own son stood in the doorway. Up jumped the swineherd in amazement, and from his hands fell the vessels he was using to mix the wine. He went to greet his master, kissing his head and his shining eyes, and both his hands. And as a loving father embraces his own son, come back from a distant land after 10 long years, his only son, greatly beloved and much sorrowed for, so did the noble swineherd clasp Telemachus and kiss him all over. He had escaped from death, and sobbing he spoke to him these winged words.
You have come, Telemachus, sweet light. I thought I would never see you again, after you left in your ship for Pylos. But come in, dear child, let me feast my eyes on you. Here in my house, come back from abroad. You don't visit the farm often, or us herdsmen, but stay in town. It must do your heart good to look at that revealing crowd of suitors.
And Telemachus, in his clear-headed way,
Have it your way, Papa, but it's for your sake I've come, to see you with my own eyes, and to hear from you whether my mother is still in our house, or someone else has married her by now, and Odysseus' bed, with no one to sleep in it, has become a nest of spider webs.
The swineherd answered him.
Yes, she's in your house, waiting and waiting, with an enduring heart, poor soul, weeping away the lonely days and nights.
He spoke and took the young man's spear. Telemachus went in, and as he crossed the stone threshold, Odysseus stood up to offer him his seat. But Telemachus, from across the room, checked him and said,
Keep your seat, stranger. We'll find another one around the place. Eumaeus here can do that.
He spoke, and Odysseus sat down again. The swineherd piled up some green brushwood and covered it with a fleece, and upon this the true son of Odysseus sat down. Then the swineherd set out platters of roast meat, leftovers from yesterday's meal, and hurried around heaping up bread in baskets and mixing sweet wine in an ivy wood bowl. Then he sat down opposite godlike Odysseus, and they helped themselves to the fare before them. When they had had enough to eat and drink, Telemachus spoke to the godlike swineherd.
Where did this stranger come from, Papa? What kind of sailors brought him to Ithaca? I don't suppose he walked to our island.
And you answered, Eumaeus, my swineherd.
I'll tell you everything plainly, child. He says he was born somewhere in Crete, and that it has been his lot to be a roamer and wanderer from city to city. But now he has run away from a Thesprotian ship and come to my farmstead. I put him in your hands. Do as you wish. He declares he is your suppliant.
And Telemachus, wise beyond his years.
This makes my heart ache, Eumaeus. How can I welcome this guest in my house? I'm still young, and I don't have the confidence to defend myself if someone picks a fight. As for my mother, her heart is torn. She can't decide whether to stay here with me and keep the house, honoring her husband's bed, and the voice of the people, or to go away with whichever man among her suitors is best of the Achaeans, and offers the most gifts. But as to our guest, now that he's come to your house, I will give him a tunic and cloak, fine clothes, and a two-edged sword, and sandals for his feet, and passage to wherever his heart desires. Or keep him here if you wish, at your farmstead, and take care of him. I'll send the clothes and all his food, so it won't be a hardship for you or your men. What I won't allow is for him to come up there among the suitors. They are far too reckless and arrogant, and I fear they will make fun of him, mock him, and it would be hard for me to take that. But what can I do? One man, however powerful, can't do much against superior numbers.
Then Odysseus, who had borne much, said,
My friend, surely it is right for me to speak up. It breaks my heart to hear you talk about the suitors acting like this in your house, and going against the will of a man as great as you. Is it against your will? Isn't it? What happened? Do the people up and down the land all hate you? Has a god turned them against you? Or do you blame your brothers, whom a man has to rely upon in a fight, especially if a big fight comes up? I wish I were as vigorous as I am angry, or were a son of flawless Odysseus, or Odysseus himself. Then I would put my neck down on the chopping block, if I did not give them hell when I came into the halls of Odysseus, son of Laertus. But if they overwhelmed me with superior numbers, I would rather be dead, killed in my own halls, than have to keep watching these disgraceful deeds. Strangers mistreated, men dragging the woman through the beautiful halls, wine spilled, bread wasted, and all with no end in sight.
Telemachus answered in his clear-headed way.
Well, stranger, I'll tell you the whole story. It's not that the people have turned against me, nor do I have any brothers to blame. Zeus has made our family run in a single line. Laertes was the son of Arcesius, and Laertes had only one son, Odysseus, who only had me, a son he never knew. And so now our house is filled with enemies, all of the nobles who rule the islands, Dulichium, Sami, wooden Zacynthus, and all of those with power on rocky Ithaca, are courting my mother and ruining our house. She neither refuses to make a marriage she hates or is able to stop it. They are eating us out of house and home, and will come after me soon. But all of this rests on the knees of the gods. Eumaeus, go to Penelope right away that I'm safe. Go tell Penelope right away that I'm safe and back from Pylos. I'll wait for you here. Tell only her, and don't let any of the suitors find out. Many of them are plotting against me.
And you answered him, Eumaeus, my swineherd.
I follow you, Telemachus. I understand. But tell me this. Should I go the same way to Laertes also and tell him the news? Poor man, for a while he still oversaw the fields, although he was grieving greatly for Odysseus, and would eat and drink with the slaves in the house whenever he had a notion. But now, since the very day you sailed to Pylos, they say he hasn't been eating or drinking as before.
Okay. Thanks. Book 16, page 244, line 149. But now, since the very day you sailed to Pylos, they say he hasn't been eating or drinking as before or overseeing the fields. He just sits and groans, weeping his heart out, and the flesh is wasting away from his bones. And Telemachus in his clear-headed way. That's hard, but we will let him be, despite all pain. If mortals could have all their wishes granted, we would choose first the day of my father's return. No, just deliver your message and come back, and don't go traipsing all through the countryside looking for Laertes. But tell my mother to send the housekeeper as soon as she can, secretly. She could bring the old man the message. So the swineherd got going. He tied on his sandals and was off to the city. The swineherd's departure was not unnoticed by Athena. She approached the farmstead in the likeness of a woman, beautiful, tall, and accomplished in handiwork, and stood in the doorway of Eumaeus's hut, showing herself to Odysseus. Telemachus did not see her before him or notice her presence, for the gods are not visible to everyone. But Odysseus saw her, and the dogs did too, and they did not bark, but slunk away whining to the other side of the farmstead. The goddess, too, lifted her brows, and Odysseus understood. He went out of the hut, past the courtyard's great wall, and stood before her. Athena said to him, Son of Laertes in the line of Zeus, tell your son now, and do not keep him in the dark, so that you too can plan the suitor's destruction and then go into town. As for myself, I will not be gone long. No, I am eager for battle. With this she touched him with her golden wand. A fresh tunic and cloak replaced his rags, and he was taller and younger, his skin tanned, his jawline firm, and his beard glossy black. Having worked her magic, the goddess left, and Odysseus went back into the hut. His son was astounded. Shaken and flustered, he turned away his eyes for fear it was a god, and words fell from his lips in nervous flurries. You look different, stranger, than you did before, and your clothes are different, and your complexion. You must be a god, one of the immortals who hold high heaven. Be gracious to us, so we can offer you acceptable sacrifice and finely wrought gold, and spare us, please. And godlike Odysseus, who had borne much. I am no god. Why liken me to the deathless ones? No, I am your father, on whose account you have suffered many pains and endured the violence of men. Saying this, he kissed his son and let his tears fall to the ground. He had held them in until now. But Telemachus could not believe that this was his father, and he blurted out, You cannot be my father, Odysseus. You must be some spirit enchanting me only to increase my grief and pain later. No mortal man could figure out how to do this all on his own. Only a god could so easily transform someone from old to young. A while ago you were old and shabbily dressed, and now you are like the gods who hold high heaven. And Odysseus from his mind's teeming depths. Telemachus, it does not become you to be so amazed that your father is here in this house. You can be sure that no other Odysseus will ever come. But I am here just as you see, home at last, after 20 years of suffering and wandering. So you will know this is Athena's doing. She can make me look like whatever she wants, a beggar sometimes and sometimes a young man, wearing fine clothes. It's easy for the gods to glorify a man or to make him look poor. He spoke and sat down, and Telemachus threw his arms around his wonderful father and wept, and a longing arose in both of them to weep and lament, and their shrill cries crowded the air, like the cries of birds, sea-eagles or taloned vultures whose young chicks rough farmers have stolen out of their nests before they were fledged. Their tears were that piteous, and the sun, its light fading, would have set on their weeping, had not Telemachus suddenly said to his father, "What ship brought you here, father? And where did the crew say they were from? I don't suppose you came here on foot." And Odysseus, the godlike survivor, "I'll tell you the truth about this, son. The Phaeacians brought me, famed sailors who give passage to all who come their way. They brought me over the sea as I slept in their swift ship and set me ashore on Ithaca with donations of bronze and clothing and gold, splendid treasures that are now stored in caves by grace of the gods. I have come here now at Athena's suggestion. You and I must plan how to kill our enemies. List them for me now, so I can know who they are, and how many, and so I can weigh the odds and decide whether you and I can go up against them alone, or whether we have to enlist some allies." Telemachus took a deep breath and said, "Father, look now, I know your great reputation, how you can handle a spear and what a strategist you are, but this is too much for me. 2 men simply cannot fight against such superior numbers and superior force. There are not just 10 suitors, or twice that, but many times more. Here's the count. From Dulichium there are 52, the pick of their young men, and 6 attendants. From Same there are 24. From Zacynthus there are 20. And from Ithaca itself 12, all the noblest, and with them are Medon the herald, the divine bard, and 2 attendants who carve. If we go up against all of them in the hall, I fear your vengeance will be bitter indeed. Please try to think of someone to help us, someone who would gladly be our ally." And Odysseus, who had borne much, "I'll tell you who will help. Do you think that Athena and her father Zeus would be help enough, or should I think of more?" Telemachus answered in his clear-headed way, "You're talking about 2 excellent allies, although they do sit a little high in the clouds and have to rule the whole world and the gods as well." And Odysseus, who had borne much, "Those 2 won't hold back from battle for long. They'll be here all right, when the fighting starts between the suitors and us in my high-roofed halls. For now, go at daybreak up to the house and keep company with these insolent hangers-on. The swineherd will lead me to the city later, looking like an old, broken-down beggar. If they treat me badly in my house, just endure it. Even if they drag me through the door by my feet or throw things at me, just bear it patiently. Try to dissuade them, try to talk them out of their folly, sure, but they won't listen to you at all, because their day of reckoning is near. And here's something else for you to keep in mind. When Athena in her wisdom prompts me, I'll give you a signal. When you see me nod, take all the weapons that are in the hall into the lofted storeroom and stow them there. When the suitors miss them and ask you where they are, set their minds at ease, saying, 'Oh, I have stored them out of the smoke. They're nothing like they were when Odysseus went off to Troy, but are all grimed with soot.' Also, a god put this thought into my head, that when you men are drinking, you might start quarreling and someone could get hurt, which would ruin your feasting and courting. Steel has a way of drawing a man to it. But leave behind a couple of swords for us, and 2 spears and ox-hide shields. Leave them where we can get to them in a hurry. Pallas Athena and Zeus, in his cunning, will keep the suitors in a daze for a while. And one more thing before you go. If you are really my son, and have my blood in your veins, don't let anyone know that Odysseus is at home. Not Laertes, not the swineherd, not anyone in the house, not even Penelope. You and I by ourselves will figure out which way the women are leaning. We'll test more than one of the servants, too, and see who respects us and fears us, and who cares nothing about either one of us and fails to honor you. You're a man now. And Odysseus's resplendent son answered, You'll soon see what I'm made of, father, and I don't think you'll find me lacking, but I'm not sure your plan will work to our advantage. Think about it. It'll take forever for you to make the rounds, testing each man, while back in the house the high-handed suitors are having a good time, eating their way through everything we own. I agree, you should find out which of the women dishonor you and which are innocent, but as for testing the men in the fields, let's do that afterward, if indeed you know something from Zeus who holds the Aegis. While these two were speaking to each other, the sturdy ship that brought Telemachus and his crew from Pylos was pulling into Ithaca. They sailed into the deep harbor and hauled the black ship up onto the shore. Porters in high spirits relieved them of their gear and carried the beautiful gifts to Clytius's house. They sent a herald ahead to Odysseus's palace to tell Penelope that Telemachus was out in the country and had ordered the ship to sail out onto the city so that she, the queen, would not fall to weeping with worry. So it happened that the swineherd and herald met while they were bringing the same message to Odysseus's wife. When they reached the palace, the herald spoke out in the women's presence. As of now, lady, your son has returned. But the swineherd went up to Penelope and told her all that her son had asked him to. His message delivered, he left the hall and went through the courtyard and back to his swine. This was bad news for the suitors. They filed out of the hall and past the great wall of the courtyard and sat down before the gates. Eurymachus, Polybus's son, was first to speak. Damn it, Telemachus has some nerve pulling off this voyage. We never thought we'd see it happen. Well, let's get a tarred ship out on the water, the best we have, and a crew to man the oars and tell our men out at sea to get back here as soon as they can. He was still speaking when Amphinomus, turning round, saw a ship in the harbor, sails being furled, the crew with oars in their hands. He chuckled softly and said to his companions, Well, so much for a message. Here they are. Either some god told them, or they spotted Telemachus's ship sailing by, but couldn't catch her. They trooped down to the shore and made quick work of hauling the black ship onto the beach. Attendants relieved the crew of their gear, and the whole company went off to the assembly. They wouldn't allow anyone else, young or old, to sit with them. Antinous rose to speak. Just look at how the gods have saved this man. Day after day, watchmen sat on the windy heights, relieving each other until the sun went down, and we never spent the night on the shore, but were out at sea all night, waiting for dawn, waiting for Telemachus, out for his blood, and now some god has delivered him home. We'll have to find a way to do him in here. We can't let him slip through our hands again. As long as Telemachus is still alive, I don't like our odds in what we're trying to do. He's shrewd and he's smart, and the people aren't on our side at all anymore. We have to act before he calls an assembly. I don't think he's going to let things slide. He's going to be angry, and he'll stand up and tell everyone how we plotted his death, but could not catch him. They won't approve when they hear of our crimes. And there's a danger they'll do something to us, drive us out of our land, and we'll wind up in exile. No, we have to beat him to it, jump him out in the fields, away from the city, or on the road. We'll keep all his possessions, dividing them fairly among us. His house, though, we'll give to his mother and whoever weds her. But if you don't like this plan, if you'd rather he stay alive and keep his ancestral wealth, we shouldn't keep gathering here anymore and devouring all this pleasant fare. Each man will have to court her from his own house, sending her gifts and trying to win her hand, and she will marry the man who offers the most and comes to her as her fated husband. He spoke, and they all sat there in silence until Amphinomus stood up to speak, son of Nisus and grandson of Aretias. He led the suitors who came from Dulichium, with its grassy meadows and rich wheat fields. Penelope liked him for the way he spoke and the good sense he showed, and now he spoke to the suitors with good will to all. Friends, I would not willingly choose to kill Telemachus. It is a serious matter to murder someone of royal stock. We should first consult the will of the gods, if great Zeus ordains it. I will kill him myself and urge on others, but if the gods are against it, I urge you to stop. Amphinomus's speech carried the day. The suitors stood up and went back to Odysseus's house, entered and sat on their polished chairs. Penelope now had a notion to come out among her overbearing, insolent suitors. She had learned of the plot to kill her son, in his own house, the herald maiden told her, after he overheard the suitors talking, and so the beautiful lady came into the hall with her serving women. When she had come among the suitors, she stood shawled in light by a column that supported the roof of the great house. Hiding her cheeks behind her silken veils, she spoke these harsh words to Antinous. Antinous, you are a haughty and evil man. They say you are the best of your generation in all of Ithaca, in counsel and in speech, but you don't measure up to your reputation. You must be mad, plotting Telemachus's death. Don't you care at all that your father was once a suppliant here? Zeus witnesses this, and it is unholy for suppliants and hosts to harm each other. Or haven't you heard of the time your father came to his house as a fugitive? The people were angry with him because he had joined up with the Taphian pirates and harassed our allies, the Thesprotians. The citizens wanted to beat him to death and gobble up his large and pleasant estate, but they were held in check by Odysseus. It is his house that you are now gobbling up, without atonement. His wife you are wooing. His son you are trying to kill. And as for me, you are causing me unspeakable distress. Stop it, I tell you, and tell the others to stop. Then Eurymachus, son of Polybus, answered, Penelope, Icarius's wise daughter, cheer up, don't be so upset by all this. There's not a man alive, nor will there ever be, who will lay hands on your son Telemachus, while I still breathe and look upon this earth. Anyone who tries, I give my solemn assurance, will spill his black blood around the point of my spear. No, I too often sat on Odysseus's knees, and the great hero would put roast meat in my hands and make me sip red wine. And so Telemachus is the dearest of all men to me, and I guarantee he need have no fear of death from the suitors. That is, from the gods there is no avoiding it. A heartwarming speech, but he was still planning to kill her son. Penelope went upstairs to her softly lit rooms and wept for Odysseus, her beloved husband, until gray-eyed Athena cast sweet sleep upon the woman's eyelids. Evening fell, and the swineherd came back to Odysseus and his son, who had slaughtered a yearling boar and were busy making supper. Athena drew near to Odysseus and tapped him with her wand, making him into an old man again, clothed in rags. She was afraid the swineherd would recognize him, and, unable to keep the secret, go bring the news to Penelope. Telemachus looked up and said to the swineherd, You're back, Eumaeus. What news from town? Have the suitors returned from their ambush? Or are they still looking for me to sail past? And you answered him, Eumaeus, my swineherd. It wasn't my business to nose around town asking about that, and I wanted to come back as soon as I had delivered my message. On the way in, though, I met up with a herald sent by your shipmates. He was fast, and got there first to tell your mother the news. I know one more thing, for I saw it myself. I was above the city by the hill of Hermes on my way back when I saw a sailing ship pull into harbor. She had a large crew and was loaded with shields and bladed spears. I thought it was them, but I don't really know. Telemachus smiled, feeling his ancestors' blood, and glanced at Odysseus, avoiding the swineherd's eye. When they had finished preparing the meal, they fell to feasting. There was plenty for everyone, and when they all had enough of food and drink, their minds turned toward rest, and they took the gift of sleep.